Hello. Oh, I can't hear you.
How's that?
Yep, I can hear you now.
We're live.
All right.
Only screwed up one thing so far. This is my first time doing a talk stream and using a completely different program. That's not for you, Sam. That's for the room. So if I make a few blunders, just roll with it. Can everybody see and hear okay? We good? Okay. Sam,
Yes.
that was an amazing set.
Thank you.
No, it was beyond that. I don't think I've heard that the long computer blue more than once before. You play. I love what you play, man. You got such a library of purple stuff. It's deep. It's rare. It was great. Great set. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me. So I wonder if anybody here is new to either of us and not quite sure your credentials, Sam, or your background with Prince. But I don't want to sum it up for you. I just want to kick things off proper. I want to say thanks to everybody for being here. I especially want to say thanks to Sam for joining me for this interview. Is my mic level good?
Yep.
All right, perfect. And I just wanted to have a little conversation about one of our favorite topics. Also happens to be someone that Sam is pretty familiar with, having worked with Prince, directly for Prince for several years. So we're going to get into that in the next hour. It's meant to be casual. It's meant to be fun. And I want people to learn more about you, Sam, your background, and what your interactions with Prince were like. Because we've heard stories here and there, mostly from chat room, like the chat during Purple Sets, and you'll drop like a story or something like that. And it's just like, we got to do this in a proper sit down, talk stream. So here we are.
All right.
Your background though, like before you even met Prince, just talk a little bit about that. I knew that I think you were born somewhere and then moved to Chicago for a long time, right?
Yeah, I was actually born in San Francisco.
Okay.
And moved to Chicago when I was 5. And I grew up in Chicago, spent about 35 years there. I went to college in Chicago. I went to the School of the Art Institute for art school learning. And that's where I kind of got into the internet and using the internet as a design tool. And that's kind of what led me to my career in the creative internet arts. Doing that.
Saw you on stage at the Webbies.
Yes.
What year was that?
That was 2006.
And Prince himself attended the Webbies.
Yeah. So what happened is that the MPG Music Club got a Webby Award, and then Prince himself got a Lifetime Achievement Webby Award.
Yeah.
So we actually got 2 that night, and they were both at Paisley Park, and they're still there somewhere. But yeah, so he actually showed up to the performance. I remember I obviously got to go to the event, and he kind of took his time getting there, and the event organizers kept texting me like, "Is he coming? He's really coming, right? He's coming, right?"
Yeah.
Every 10 minutes, I'm like, "Yeah, he's coming, man. That's what he told me."
Ask him. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he showed up, and he even did a performance there. Was that planned?
I think they didn't know what to expect. Like he definitely didn't rehearse anything, so it was just sort of off the cuff. And
oh my God,
he didn't have to do a 5-word speech, but that's what he chose to do. And then he played guitar, so I guess that's what he wanted.
5-word speech.
It was kind of funny because like the crowd at that event, like normally award shows are kind of chill. Everyone's like whatever, hanging back. But at this one, it was like tech people, so they awkwardly got very starstruck when he showed up and kind of rushed the stage and tried to take pictures and things.
I bet. Yeah, and that didn't always make him feel very comfortable, I can imagine.
Probably not. I think he might have been a little surprised. I was a little surprised. Like, I'm like, dudes, let's be a little more professional. It's like supposed to be my crowd.
Right. So that was 2006, right? That was well into your tenure with Prince. But go back to Chicago. I mean, Chicago is not next door to Minneapolis, but it's not far either. Did you feel some of that like Midwestern Minneapolis artistic vibe when you were growing up there? How many years were you in Chicago?
I was in Chicago 35 years. So yeah, I would say the whole Midwest has a certain vibe that, as you know, like people kind of connect easy if you're from the same region like that. And being so close to Minneapolis, only 500 miles away, like we would go up there a lot, and we would go to like Prince shows at Paisley Park and hang out at the MPG store and go to Glam Slam. I mean, we were doing all that stuff even before I got involved in actually working for him.
And is that how that happened? How did you meet Prince?
Well, what had happened was, so I started doing online stuff and getting into the internet, and this is like the mid '90s. So this is like the early days of the internet, and there weren't a lot of official things going on for fans and artists even. So like I went online and I tried to find like, where are the Prince fans? Like, I'm online, where are the Prince fans? So I found like people all over the world and connected with them and talked to them. Some of them I'm still friends with even today, like 25 years later. And I found all the people in Chicago who were Prince fans.
Yeah.
And I started to organize parties and events. And then that eventually led to a club night where I did a night of all Prince music one night a month at the Berlin nightclub for about 13 years, I think. So all this was going on kind of, mid '90s and before I got involved. And he started really getting into the internet too. Like Prince, you saw in like that movie, The Beautiful Experience, where Nona Gay was accessing songs through her computer. Like that technology didn't exist at the time it came out in '94. Like he was thinking ahead. Like that's kind of what he was envisioning. Like I want to see that. And I was all on board for that. So he started dabbling into the internet. He started doing things with 1-800-NEW-FUNK.com and LoveForOneAnother.com. And I because I was so active in the online community, I got to know the people who were working on his website before me. And so when Prince decided he wanted a new website and he wanted to get fans involved, like they tapped me. They're like, "Hey, why don't you work on this? You do this professionally, don't you?" I'm like, yeah, I do. So that's how I kind of got involved with LoveForOneAnother.com. It was supposed to be like a charity site run by fans, and a source of positivity, stuff like that. So that's
what year would you say that kicked off?
That was end of '98, beginning of '99.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think the two artists who really grasped the internet and like went whole hog, like full into it in the '90s, like they were early to it, would be Prince, obviously, and then the other one would be David Bowie.
Right.
Do you remember? Did you ever buy a compact disc, David Bowie album, like a remastered album in the '90s, and it had those like postcards inside that were like advertising BowieNet or something in the CD-ROM, and you'd load it in, and you're on the net.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Was Prince paying attention to some of that? David Bowie, what he was
definitely
doing?
Yeah. Like we were looking for all kinds of examples of what people were doing, and there weren't a lot out there at that time in the late '90s. So Bowie was definitely one of those guys that we were looking at and looking at what they were doing. And he wasn't really using it so much as a distribution tool for his music. It was really more like creating an online community, which is cool. But we were looking for like a music distribution model, and there really wasn't that at the time. There weren't any like artist run download stores, and this is before iTunes too. Like this is before streaming, obviously, and like downloads. People were still really scared of Napster. Yeah, and they were really afraid that downloads were going to ruin the universe and all that. So there wasn't a whole lot for us to look for when we were trying to think of what we could do with his music.
What did Prince think about Napster?
He thought it was great, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
He saw it as a tool he could harness or something?
I don't know if he saw it as a tool he could harness. I think he saw it as a disruption tool for the music industry.
Like that.
Music industry had a lock on all the channels, right? They had a lock on radio. They had a lock on MTV. They had a lock on talk shows, whatever, magazines. Like you had to go through them to get through all these channels to get your music out there. And Napster kind of flipped that all on its head. Like Napster was like, no, we don't need any of that. Like we just got people doing it, like 12-year-olds doing it for free. Like we're good. And I think Prince really liked that idea of the record labels getting cut out of the deal. I mean, obviously he was against piracy and bootlegging and all that, but I think as far as a way to get to fans directly, that's kind of what he saw in it.
Yeah, it's funny because around that same time that he was being innovative with the internet and his presence and creating his own community there, you would hear stories and rumors about how he would maybe like sue somebody for posting one of his photos on a website. What, talk about that? Like, was that something that he walked around the office like, I can't believe someone's posting my stuff without my permission? Or how did he handle that?
Well, the posting the photos and suing people for that kind of came a little bit later. So that was more like around 2007.
Okay.
That he was really kind of focused on that. And
yeah,
I'm not sure what that was about. Like that, talking about situations where he and I disagreed, that was actually one of them. Like, I didn't see an issue with fan sites posting pictures. Obviously suing your fans is a bad idea. It's not going to work out well for you, like with the fans or with public relations. Like, it's just not a good look, suing your fans, especially over photographs. So he wanted me to kind of be like the web cop and like harass these people about their photos. And I said, well, look, I'll ask them to take it down. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking somebody to do something, but I'm not going to be like a cop and like threaten to sue them and all this nonsense. Like, that's not who I am, and that's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, that's not a position you want to be put in.
No, because I didn't agree with it, and I got my own reputation to think of as well.
True. In the chat, I'm seeing people commenting about Control. I was just going to bring that up. He loved the disruption. He loved the kind of newness of the web and everything, and seeing if he could get in there. But I think that the control thing, the lack of control over your images, your music, anything that could be digitized, and he probably got a little paranoid about that.
Yeah. I think he kind of famously said, and I think it was 2010, he said the internet is dead. And I think a lot of people interpreted that as some kind of out of touch, like he doesn't know what he's talking about kind of thing. But I think what he meant was the internet was dead as that disruptive tool that it was in the late 90s. It was dead as in terms of like this sort of way that it kind of upended things, because the industry had moved in and planted their stakes in it, and they had created new channels that they could control, like iTunes and streaming services and stuff like that. So I think that his attitude about the internet definitely did change over time, and probably towards the mid to late 2000s, he was a bit more like, it's not the revolutionary thing it used to be.
Yeah, and it's funny, he really kind of controlled the tempo there too, because thinking about artists on the internet losing control of their likeness, and Napster coming along, and he didn't make any money every time someone downloaded one of his songs, but he still liked the idea of it. I think he was he's an enigmatic person, so you know better than any of us. So but let's go back to, like, you met him. Talk a little bit more about like how you met him, and then he's like, hey, you want to work for me? How did that all go?
It was actually a really long, gradual process. Like, it started, with Love One Other and with fans, and we would have meetings online. So we would actually go to AOL chat rooms that we would create. It would be there would be private chat rooms just with our group and with him or with a representative of his.
Wait, that's really how you guys had meetings back then? That's like,
yeah.
I mean, we do that all the time today with Zoom and stuff. Like, it's incredible. He was so ahead of the time. Again.
Yeah, like it's like the chat right now. We would just kind of go back and forth, and I've saved like a ton of those chats. I could probably publish a book of just those chats because I have a ton of them.
People would pay for that. They would.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a lot of like back and forth with him and talking, and so I didn't actually meet him face to face probably until like end of 99, 2000, or like around there. Like, it was just sort of this back and forth online, emails, communicating just digitally for a long time. I think he just preferred that way of communicating with people he didn't really know. And obviously he didn't know me from anybody. So he wasn't inviting me over for pajama parties day one.
Not yet. Right. Okay. So when's the first time you meet him face to face?
So we would go up to Paisley Park a lot for events and stuff, and kind of help out and volunteer. And like, I remember there was this one event. It was a Paisley Park garage sale, and
a garage sale.
Yeah, like he just kind of wanted to get rid of a bunch of stuff that was just in the sound stage, taking up space.
God.
So we took a ton of retail. We just marked it down and Maybe some people in the chat have actually been to that, but it was pretty fun. We sold like some tour props from past tours and things like that. But anyway, so I'm in there sweating, organizing this merchandise, and he's strolling through, checking things out, and he comes over to me and he says, "Hey, what's up?" and shakes my hand, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm Sam." He's like, "Hey, I know."
No way.
And so that was kind of the first time that we actually like talked in face to face, not as a computer chat.
Yeah. So, but working for him in that capacity, does he say move to Minneapolis, or what did he dictate that you would do to work for him?
Well, I wasn't like a full-time employee at first. I just started doing the web stuff, and it was kind of like I had a day job, and then I would do the web stuff for him. In my, in the time I wasn't working, so I wasn't really like a full-on employee for a little while, probably a year or two. So, right. we would talk about moving to Minneapolis sometimes, and he would kind of throw it out there every once in a while. He even talked about like, he owned a lot of properties around that area. I'm not sure where they all wound up now, but he always talked about, yeah, I got this house over here. Maybe you could live there. It's next to Kirk.
Really?
And, yeah. And I never took the bait. I never jumped the gun and moved to Minneapolis because I kind of, maybe we both realized that like our working relationship really worked well 500 miles apart from each other, because that way I didn't burn out, and that way he didn't get sick of me. And that's why I think I lasted 9 years, is because, I wasn't around like all the time, and he couldn't call me at 5 a.m. and tell me to get over to Paisley, and, I get all burnt out. And
that was probably you being smart without realizing at the time. Like, if I move in next door to this guy, he is going to be very demanding.
Yeah. And we'll probably get sick of each other pretty quick.
Yeah.
And Chicago was close enough, it was like a 45-minute flight. So
yeah, true.
I could be up there whenever he needed me.
That's awesome. Okay. So one of the main things I really wanted to ask you about was how you guys distributed music in the fan club. So one of your main jobs was organizing and running the NPG Music Club. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
What year did you guys kick that off?
We kicked that off Valentine's Day 2001.
Okay. And what was there must have been so much planning that went into that, and how are we going to create a club that is, worthwhile, and what's the right amount to charge? And then did you even talk about how the music would be distributed before the club was conceived?
Oh yeah, like it was an ongoing conversation for a couple of years. After Love for One Another, he invited me to work on a separate site, mpgonlineltd.com, which was kind of like an interim site. And we put up a few MP3 downloads up there, here and there. But during that whole time, like while that site was up, I was meeting with companies and talking to them, like, what can we do together? I met with like, Real Player and companies like that, like Yahoo.
Oh, okay.
And, talking to them like, well, what can you offer Prince, and what will he agree to, that where he doesn't feel like he's just part of another record label? And so we kind of settled on this one tech company called Techidence, and they were going to build us this player that the music would download to. And it was a really great idea, and it was nice in concept. Unfortunately, like in practice, it just was too much of a learning curve in 2001. Like it involved installing things and like plugins, and people just weren't really having it. So
yeah.
So we did a lot of trial and error like that. If something wasn't working because it was our company, we could just pull the plug and start something different. So we pulled the plug on the Techidence player, and then just put up MP3 downloads and said, you know what? They're up there. Easy as easy can be to get them. And if you sign up, like it's all there for you.
Did you have to, you paid for a membership, and then did you have like a password to get into the site to download the songs?
Yeah. So you had a password, and that took you to a download page where all of the downloads that were available to you were located. So
you could download digital song files, and you said MP3s, but weren't you guys encoding them in the Windows Media Player files?
That came a little bit later when we did the Musicology download store in around 2004 or 5.
Okay.
We were working with a company that kind of convinced us that we needed to encrypt our files so they weren't going to get freely shared around. So we were doing that for a little while.
I was just going to ask like how you guys protected those files from being shared to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the MP3s, obviously we couldn't do anything about that, but our kind of incentive was, yeah, sure, you could probably go on Napster and find these files, but you're not going to be a member of the club. You're not going to get access to the front row tickets.
Right.
You're not going to get access to, sound checks and all the other perks that members were getting. So we kind of built it into like, that you have an incentive to join beyond just these downloadable files.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you've got an online music store happening. It's not really a store. It's a site where the files are posted and you unlock access to get in if you're a member of the club. Is that right? Okay. So the decisions about the music, like how did Prince say, okay, I'm going to do, I don't know, Chocolate Invasion? Like what was the decision making around which music was going to be distributed and how it was going to be distributed, aside from posting MP3s? Because you guys did make physical copies, didn't you?
Excuse me. Yeah, there was a plan at one point to distribute, a bunch of stuff from the MPG Music Club as a box set called the Chocolate Invasion, and unfortunately it didn't happen. But there was a period right after the MP3 download period where we did actual physical CDs that we sent out to people. So we sent out the One Night Alone box set and the One Night Alone piano CD to people directly. And we also made the album Expectation available, and the Rainbow Children. We gave it to the members before it was released.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Else. So,
because he wasn't on a label then, right?
Mm-mm.
He was doing self-distribution of his physical music too.
I mean, the whole time I was with him, he was just doing these one-off deals. So
I see.
Like they would distribute the music, but he wasn't really a part of the label.
Oh, okay. I remember, I think he did one of the one-off deals he did was it Musicology or 3120? It was like Columbia Records, a really big label, did a one-off with him. I remember that was kind of like a big splash because he was like back with a major, and that was kind of against his thing. Right.
Yeah, that was the thing. But I mean, you have to trust that if he was going to do a deal with these guys, he was going to do it on his terms. He certainly wasn't giving up any, master recording rights or any of the publishing or any of that stuff.
That's true. So he was smart enough to know all that. Like that was where the money was. That was how he kept himself from going into debt. I've been seeing these these posts on Instagram, internet, everywhere by these bands today saying, "Sorry guys, we have to cancel our tour. We can't make it work financially.
Oh, yeah.
Like we can't even afford the equipment to tour with to break even on ticket sales or whatever." I mean, the model used to be you would lose money on the physical music, but you'd make a ton of money on touring.
Right.
My understanding is that labels getting more involved, they started doing these 360 deals. So they're taking a cut of the touring, all the merch that's sold. I mean, super greedy because their revenue streams are pretty much dead, right? Like nobody goes to the store and buys CDs anymore.
Right.
I mean, vinyl's back, but I mean, you can't. It's startling to me that touring now has become a almost like a debt-based exercise for artists, which is sad.
Well, yeah, and the ones that are able to do it, they have to charge so much. I mean, these ticket prices are just crazy right now.
Yeah, there was a video clip of Kurt Cobain in disbelief. He's like $50 for a concert ticket. Like,
who's charging that?
Yeah, who's doing that? And this was
what crazy person is doing that.
I love that. And then if you think about around that time, they and Pearl Jam were really trying to go to war with the concert ticketing industry. They they weren't that successful, but how did Prince feel about all that? He didn't really want to gouge fans, right? He wanted them to. He wasn't looking to make a mint off his fans. I feel.
Right. No, I think that's true. Like for the One Night Alone tour and for the Musicology tour, we were able to sell tickets directly to the fans, and we were able to hold the best seats in the house for the music club members. And all that was something that he built into his deal with the tour company. So I know for Musicology, we were selling tickets directly from our website for the shows, and you had to be a member to get them, but membership was only $25. So people would join our club just to get the tickets. They're like $25. I don't care. Like whatever.
Yeah.
And they joined to get our tickets. And that was all done directly through our site. Like, so we didn't have Ticketmaster fees. We didn't have, you know, venue, whatever fees and all that other crazy stuff. Like we were able to put a lid on that, which was great.
I mean, that's good because it's goodwill towards your main audience, the music buying public, right? So,
well, and your hardcore fans, like that's who the members of the music club were the hardcore fans. And so having them taken care of is just gonna, you know, bring good karma all around for everybody.
So if my chronology is right, I think I mispronounced that word. Around 2001, that's when he's gone through his transformation and devout, like, Jehovah's Witness thing. Is that correct? And Rainbow Children is kind of a product of his conversion or his restored or newly found faith in the Jehovah's Witness,
right?
In belief. So did he talk about that a lot with you, with other people, just openly? The reason I ask is because Questlove said in a podcast, he got really, like, there was a period in Prince's life when he saw Prince coming. And he's like, oh, it's going to be another, like, Jehovah's Witness recruitment thing. And I just don't know what he was like around that time. What would you say?
No, he never mentioned it. No, I'm just kidding. He talked about it all the time. He invited us to Kingdom Hall. He invited me to Kingdom Hall many times. I've been to Kingdom Hall dozens of times with him in Minneapolis and LA also. Did Bible study with him a lot. You know, just hours, me and him just talking about the Bible. And for me, like, I grew up in an atheist household. Like, God wasn't a part of our conversation. So I didn't really know anything about the Bible. And so Prince wants to talk to me about the Bible. I'm like, sure, let's talk about the Bible. Tell me all about it.
I feel like I'd be like, if Prince wants to talk to me about just about anything, I'd sit and listen, you know?
Sure. You know, and talks with him were interesting. Like I did Bible study with other Jehovah's Witnesses and tend to be a little more dogmatic and not very interesting and just kind of by the numbers. But with him, it was always very, you know, passionate and excited. And it was something he really cared about and wanted to share. And that's kind of the vibe he gave off. Like, this is something important to me. I'd like to share it with you because I hope it's, you know, something that can help you out. And that's kind of where he was coming from. It didn't stick. I never became a Jehovah's Witness, but it was still an interesting conversation.
He remained pretty faithful to it throughout his life, right? I mean, I think he stayed pretty devout.
Yeah, I don't think the swearing ever came back.
That's right. That was one of the casualties of his his conversion. I think, you know, do you think it had a net positive effect on him? Because I would say it probably did. You know,
well, you know, I mean, people turn to religion for all kinds of reasons, and I think if it was something that he felt made his life better, then I think it definitely was a positive thing for him for sure.
I think he'd gotten off his major label. He'd fought kind of a one-sided war, the slave on the face and all that for years. And probably by the end of the decade, he was seeking some new community or a new purpose. And I think that can be a good thing for people, you know, as they move into different phases of their lives, if it's based on the discipline of it and as long as it doesn't become oppressive.
Right. Yeah. And I think also, I mean, just to kind of play like dime store psychologist, I think, you know, he was looking for, you know, a family.
Yes.
You know, he was kind of looking for those that he found a parental figure in Larry Graham, who was Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
And Gemini asked if Larry Graham ever hit me up, and we also did many Bible studies together.
Really?
But you know, he kind of found that father figure, older brother type figure in Larry Graham, and Larry had his family, and they all moved to Minneapolis, and you know, Prince liked having them around, and I think he appreciated me as well because at the time I was married, I had a young daughter, and he really liked, you know, I was this family guy, and you know, he met my family, he's met my daughter, he just kind of liked the sort of wholesome nature of it.
That's remarkable because I think that however he was raised or whatever he found in either the Jehovah's Witness religion or whatever, the fact that he had that very sweet side that was very, you know, familial. You described, I think you told the story once of he said, "Oh, I want to meet your child. Like bring her with you to wherever you guys were going," or something like that.
Yeah, like 4 months after she was born, like he's like, I want to meet her. Like, why don't you guys come out to Vegas?
Yeah.
That's when he did the Aladdin show that we put out on DVD. He's like, why
Bring
don't you
your
guys come to
bring your
that
newborn
show?
to Las Vegas.
Yeah, and we're like, she's 4 months old, but okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And what was he like when he met her? Did he become like childlike? Because I think of him as a very childlike person at his core.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like doing baby talk or any of that stuff. I think he was like a little
But
scared, like, because 4-month-olds are, as you know, they're like very
yeah.
delicate, so he's very kind of like, oh,
Well,
like,
some people get like, they like see a baby and they kind of go to it, and some
yeah,
are maybe he was just more fascinated by the whole.
yeah, I think
And
that's more the case.
like you said, he'd been looking for family. I mean, the topic of family with Prince, you're absolutely right. I think it's, he even had a side band called The Family,
Yeah.
and he based his whole career in Minneapolis. He spent a lot of time in LA, but he never, called that a home base, I don't think.
No.
Because he really wanted to remain known as a Minneapolis native.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody these days, wherever they grow up, they usually end up in LA or New York. So, but he was stubborn like that. And I think we all benefit from that, because look at the scene, look at Minneapolis, the products that have come out just of that one city. And then the rest of the Midwest gets love from that, right? There's a domino effect. And I think he's responsible for that. Just, sticking to his roots, his physical roots, and claiming Minneapolis throughout. I think that was a big part of his character.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I agree.
I told you I was going to ask you this, but I'm really curious how you'd respond. So you're meeting with Prince, he's got an idea, and it's just not going to work. You have to say no to Prince. Tell a story. Like, what was that like?
Well, I think like the main one was kind of what I was saying about the fans,
The not suing your fans. Yeah.
Yeah. And like not suing your fans. Like we really just didn't see eye to eye on that at the time. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was willing to go so far. Like I'd talk to these fan sites and I'd say, this is what he wants. It's up to you to do it or not. But I'm just telling you, this is what he wants.
Yeah.
And he really wasn't. He really wanted me to like be more of an enforcer, and I just was not that guy. And creatively, it was funny. Like creatively, his tastes weren't always in sync with mine. But at the end of the day, I was like, his name's on this. Like I get paid the same either way. I might as well just do it the way he wants it, and just hopefully I can make something he likes. I wasn't trying to put my ego into it. Like, oh, this is a Sam Nation presentation. Yeah. Like,
right.
Well, it's Prince. Like he wants extra heavy drop shadow. Like, we'll do extra heavy drop shadow.
I feel like he did like to be challenged to a degree, though. Would you say?
Yeah, I don't think he wanted like yes people exactly. I mean, he it's like sort of a double-edged sword. Like he kind of wanted yes people, but he also wanted to know he had some backbone. And I think him and I really synced up on that with the Jehovah's Witness thing. Like, if I had been like day one, like, oh yeah, Prince, Jehovah's Witness, get me baptized tomorrow, I think he would have been a little bit like, all right. But I think that I was open to listen to him, but I never was, like just rushing to do whatever he said about it.
I see.
I think he respected that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I don't know how I would say no to Prince in a situation where, especially if it were something big like that.
Yeah.
Hey, I need you to go file lawsuits. What? I mean, maybe he realized the gravity of things like that after the fact. I mean, would you guys say you ever had any type of falling out, or were you guys always pretty smooth?
It was always really smooth. Yeah, definitely. We never had a falling out. He was always very polite, very professional. He was not, hard to work with. Mm-hmm. He was very focused, and he had very definite ideas on what he wanted. And for me, that just worked really well because it kind of took some of the ambiguity out of it, and he could tell me like, this is what I want, and I could be like, okay, I can do that.
But did you ever feel like maybe you were a little too close to a hero?
I mean, I think at first you can imagine
intimidation.
Being in Paisley Park for the first time, sitting in a creative office that Steve Park used to be in like just a month ago, and have Prince come walking in and looking over your shoulder. I mean, I think anybody would their heart would be a little fast in that situation.
Yeah.
But growing up, I was a huge Prince fan, but also being a creative myself, I always wanted to contribute to his thing. Like I wanted to like do my part. So it was kind of like a bass player or a keyboard player. Like I wanted to be part of his unit, his band that kind of made him even better. Yeah. So to get to do that was really a dream come true. And I never really felt like starstruck to the point where I couldn't do my job, for sure.
Well, he must have had a good way of, disarming people. I think that maybe at first the shock was more that he was a very normal person in the same room. You might instantly find him relatable when before you're in the same room with him, all you know is Prince from TV, music videos, and just the eccentric.
Well, I didn't say he was normal.
I meant he had a way of making people not feel uncomfortable.
True. Yeah. No,
that's a weird double negative.
He had a great sense of humor, but he had a certain vibe around him, a certain charisma that I think you can see in his performances, and you get around him and like he just fills the room with his personality. So like being around him was it's like it's like having that, people say about having that light shine on you. You just want it to like stay on you.
Yeah.
It's one of those experiences.
So I forgot to ask one thing about the music distribution, because I'm such a geek about stuff like this, but was there ever any committee or discussion about what music would go out?
No.
Did he play things for? Oh no. Okay. Oh, well, 2-part question. I'll ask the next part in a minute. That he didn't really take feed or input on what's going out.
Not really. I mean, like I said, he had very clear ideas about what he was doing and what he was up to, what he wanted out there. So it really wasn't like, hey, do you think the fans are like this? It was really more like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. This is what I want to put out. We had an album called High. I think, have you ever heard of that one?
No.
Yeah, there was an album called High that he was going to put out before the Rainbow Children, and he scrapped it and he did the Rainbow Children instead. But we took High and we kind of chopped all those songs up and put them in the MTG Music Club.
Okay.
So that was one thing that kind of guided his decisions. He had this whole record of songs like My Medallion and Sex Me Not and Underneath the Cream. Those were all from the High album.
Oh, wow.
So we released those to the MPG Music Club instead. So that was one thing.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I just I think about him walking out of his studio and going, it's finished. It being, whatever, Kama Sutra or one of the other projects that have kind of grown in legend, but still really aren't widely available. A lot of people haven't heard a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, there has to be the vault that they've been pulling from still has to be quite full.
Yeah, he was somebody who was always working. Like he was always in the studio, always recording something.
Did you ever get close to that studio and ever see him working?
Oh yeah, I spent many times in there with him while he was recording.
Jesus, that's amazing. That's amazing.
There'd be sometimes I'd be working up in my office, which was on the second floor, and he'd be in like Studio A, and he'd call me on the inner phone system. He'd say, "Hey, is there something to see?" Meaning like, did I make changes and updates and whatever? And I'd say, yeah, I got something to see. He said, "Okay, bring it down." So I go down there.
No way.
Come into Studio A. He's behind the soundboard with like a bass or something, and he's just doing his thing. And he's like points to the couch, just come sit down. So I sit down. I wait for him to finish, and then I show him like what I was working on. He gives me some feedback. Then maybe he'll play something for me, like, "Hey, listen to this," and stuff like that.
Oh my God. So few people can say that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So I'm holding in my hands now, shift a little bit, a couple Prince projects that you have a lot to do with. So let's just go one by one here. I think I have them maybe I think this is in the right order. So Musicology here. We got this beautiful vinyl. I'll unpack that for the camera in just a second. We've got 3121 just a couple years later. And this one isn't widely considered people's favorite Prince album, but the whole package, look at the way it's got like a hologram cover. When you move in the light, it looks different. Sam, your name's written on these album sleeves.
It's true.
You created the art for these.
Yep.
I want to know everything. So, like, actually, I'll say maybe tell a story from each of these three. And did you work on others, by the way, as well?
I worked on a lot of singles and just kind of like one-off little things, here and there. But as far as like major albums go, those are the big three.
These were on major labels, I think, each of these. So Musicology, I remember this being considered quite a bit of a comeback for him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, it was released. Was this the one through Columbia? No, this was NPG Records, but it must have been distributed by a major.
Yeah, I think it was. I think that was Sony.
So you have designed this album packaging. I mean, this is the reissue from a couple years ago, right? So I don't know if you had. Was this the original concept? What I'm holding here, all this folded out, and
we didn't actually do a vinyl back then.
Oh, right.
So it was just a CD package, and I think a cassette too. We think we did a cassette.
Okay, but this stuff had to have been in there, right?
It was all in there.
Yeah. So you designed this stuff, these parts of the package?
That project started with another artist named Jeremy Gavin. So he started the work on the Musicology album, and I kind of came in and finished it and put it all together. Yeah. So some of the artwork choices were definitely his, and some were mine. But the idea was sort of this music textbook kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's heavyweight. It feels great. I mean, I know that's the reissued vinyl, but the original concept of Musicology was like, it was going to be presented as a major release.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, that also coincided with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he opened up the Grammys. And so he's not a real like rising star.
2004. That was the Beyonce collabs, right? That when he kind of got on stage with her, and he had a good year that year.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he did that big 90 city tour, which just blew everybody away, and it was huge. So when I started with him, he was basically like an underground artist, he was not the huge Prince superstar that he used to be.
That's right.
So 2004 was really my first taste of kind of him on that level again, on the cover of Rolling Stone and Entertainment Weekly, and that was crazy.
Did you go to any of those events, like photo shoots for magazine covers, anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah, because he wanted me to edit a lot of those photos. So that's another job that I did for him, was photo editing and retouching. So a lot of those photos would kind of come my way, and I would get to retouch them, and he'd say, take that line out, like move that here, make me look like I'm 25.
Did he ever say that?
He didn't have to. It was understood.
I mean, I can see him saying that, and I can see it being like a completely serious, like, no, I really want to look like I'm 25.
Well, it's
in
funny,
his low voice.
It's funny, like he had Afshin Shahidi doing all his photography around them, and he would just kind of tell Afshin, like, "Oh, don't worry about that. Like, Sam will fix it."
Oh, okay. And did you feel pretty confident in your skills?
Oh, yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
So when Prince put you on the hook like that, you were like, actually, I know exactly what to do.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we worked really well together like that.
That's so cool.
I think that if Prince knew how to use Photoshop as well as I did, I wouldn't have had a job, because he had very specific ideas. But I was good enough at Photoshop that I could keep a job for a while.
Well, if he got good at it, he would have learned it from you, right? So
yeah,
value in that. Do you have a favorite song off this album?
I'm
going to ask you that for all three, by the way.
I just really like the title track, just because it kind of takes me back to that time, and the video, and just all the energy around it.
You just played it last hour. It was so good. I love that song. Am I thinking of 3121?
You're thinking of 3121.
Yeah, that's right. So
that's cool.
Shifting gears. That song, because it kicks off this album, is it's just so hard.
Yeah.
And it's got he's really getting into like more effects in the music at that point, with the way he's bending his voice all over that song in particular. What were his thoughts on? I mean, he'd already done Camille, like he'd already played around with tape loops and pitching up and down and stuff. But what did he think about the digital pitch correction and auto tune stuff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he wasn't into auto tune or any of those things, but he, it was really kind of a reflection of some of the engineers that got involved with him at the time. After musicology, he made a ton of money on that tour, and so what he did was he put it all back into Paisley Park, and he had Dave Hampton and his group of people come to the Paisley, and they redid all the technology and kind of updated it to that at that time industry standards. So he had a lot of new energy as far as engineers go, and he had a lot of new energy as far as equipment went. And I think that definitely fed into some of the experimentation with 3121. We worked on that record for a long time. Like it started out in 2005. It was going to be called Lotus Flower, and I did a whole package for Lotus Flower and that album.
Well, that did come out, right?
It did come out eventually. It was very different than what I worked on, but it came out after I had left. But yeah, it started out. It was called Lotus Flower. That's why he says at the beginning of 3121, like, welcome to the Lotus Flower, or whatever he said. But he was working on it all through 2004, 2005, and then we finally got it out there in 2006. But it was a project that we were all very involved with for a very long time. So I feel really, really close to 3121 just because I was so into it. And it was also, I would say, the best time working for him. He was just in a really good mood, and he was in a really good space. He was renting houses in LA, which was the 3121 house, and I spent a lot of time there. So it was a really special time.
He was all over TV that year. I definitely remember the Saturday Night Live performance of both Fury and the second one he played was it Black Sweat?
It was Beautiful, Loved, and Blessed.
Okay, that's right. He had Tamar with him.
He had Tamar with him.
Tamar. But you were at SNL when he played. When he performed.
Yeah, I got to go to that. I'm a huge SNL fan, and he knew that, and he's like, totally let me tag along and just sort of hang out in the background.
That's so cool. I just realized how dark my studio looks now. I think the light stopped coming in the window. Sorry about this. After dark.
Yeah.
So 3121 was huge. It was on Columbia Records. It was, the art is awesome. He kind of was like going back to some of that Gold Experience theme with the coloring and the color scheme on this project. So he must have had a taste, right? Like musicology re-wet his whistle to like say, you know what, I kind of like the major label, the big tour and the magazine covers and the SNL performances and stuff.
Right.
Because it worked even better for this project, or he was even more exposed, I think, that year.
Yeah, and I think Black Sweat did well for him. I think a lot of people
That's
were into
right.
that.
And Salma Hayek directed one of his videos from the album.
Yeah, he did. She did Te Amo Corazon in Morocco. They filmed that in Morocco.
He really must have been in a great mood that year, flying to Morocco to do music videos.
Sure, why not? So with Salma
Hayek. Yeah. Okay, so then, do you have a favorite song from 3121?
Yeah, I mean the title track again, like just because it just kind of takes me back to that period of time and all those parties that he used to have. And that's what he's singing about. He's singing about these parties that he would have at his house, which happened to be 3121, and how special they were. And they were really special. They were really fun experiences.
And you probably met some famous people at those parties.
Yeah, met a few.
Any good stories?
Well, it's kind of the thing there would literally be a chocolate fountain in the kitchen, and you just kind of like bump into Jay Leno while you're trying to like get a strawberry or something, or like.
The funny part about that is I'm trying to imagine like Prince, like, yeah, let's put Jay Leno on the guest list.
Or like Jessica Simpson like drank too much and was sitting in the corner, kind of not looking so good, or. Macy Gray would walk through and you're like, wow, Macy Gray's like 8 feet tall. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that until just now. These are incredible stories. Yeah, so this was the mid 2000s. Times were good.
Times were good.
And when did you say you stopped working for him?
Stopped working for him at the end of 2007.
Okay, so let's cover Planet Earth then, because that was that year, right?
Yeah, that was
okay. But you guys didn't do this vinyl originally with the hologram cover? Did that get... No. Is that on the CD, though?
It's on the CD, yeah.
Okay, so they recreated it for the vinyl. So that was your concept, right?
Yeah, Afshin, who took the photo, he was in contact with the company that was doing those in LA, and he pitched it to Prince, and Prince was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I put it together. I took the image and I layered all the files so that it had some depth to it, and
Really?
sent it to them, and they created. And they actually sent me a big one, which I have in my house hanging on the wall.
I remember seeing your name on the sleeve, and I wonder if I can get it up close enough to the camera. It says, yeah, package design by Sam Jennings, and then interactive design by Ashley Warren, and then it goes on further. But you're not going to get to see it probably from the camera, but it is right there. And I think it's in the sleeves of the others, right? The credits of the other albums too.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah,
did you work on any other stuff that came out later that you were also credited for, even though you stopped working for him?
After he passed, I did get involved in some of the reissues.
Oh, really?
So Sony Legacy wanted to reissue the One Night Alone box set, and they wanted to re-release it, kind of packaged together with the piano album and the After Party album.
I'm gonna grab that one because that's a peculiar cover to me. The One Night Alone, the piano.
Yeah, that was
this one.
Yeah,
and it's got such an interesting font too.
Yeah, that's a Steve Park creation. So I got to recreate Steve Park's work when I worked on that reissue.
Wow.
I think the idea was sort of a Miles Davis, Bitches Brew kind of vibe to it. I think that's what he was going for, just something kind of abstract and out there.
Interesting. Still heavy in the Rainbow Children themes, right? Still, that was heavy throughout the One Night Alone project, I think.
Oh yeah, because that's what he was touring under was Rainbow Children, so that was definitely a part of it. But yeah, so Sony was kind enough to let me work on that and redo the whole package, and I had all the original files from 20 years ago, so it didn't it's like you might as well go to the source to get it redone. So I was very fortunate to be able to redo that for them.
So what else would you say exists on your hard drives, your archives?
Like about 1 million photos.
Wow.
Because Afshin would take a bunch of photos and he'd just give them to me, and I'd save them off somewhere. So I've got like 1 million photos. There was a period of time briefly where Prince thought maybe I could be the photographer, because Steve Park did both design and photography. So he's like, "Well, why don't you be Steve Park?" And so he gave me a camera. But
well, at least he wasn't asking you to sue fans or anything.
No, yeah, camera I can handle. But unfortunately at the time, this is like 2000. Cameras weren't as easy to use as they are now.
Right.
Without any training, he was very good about giving you a chance to try something. So he gave me an opportunity. So I took pictures of him at Paisley Park, which no one's ever seen. I've just got them on my hard drive that I took.
No kidding.
So yeah, we have a photo. I have a Prince photo shoot that no one's ever seen. I have a bunch of concert photos I took of him on the Hit and Run tour. Those are on my hard drive. But yeah, I wasn't that great at photography, so Afshin got the job instead, and he's way better at it than I am.
That's great. I love that story. So you do have hundreds of photos unseen by anybody else besides yourself, Afshin, and Prince.
Yep.
Wow. So you think you'll keep getting contacted by the estate for help with future projects?
Yeah, I think so. There's other stuff that could get redone, reissued. They could do an expanded 3121 set, which I think would be really fun. They could do a box set of the MPG Music Club stuff, and I was thinking like I could write a companion book to go along with it that would show like sketches and ideas from the music club that never got used. There's a whole bunch of ideas that I think they could do if they ever want to go that way. I don't know. The estate's kind of in a transition right now because they settled with the siblings, so they're kind of taking over. So I'm not sure what direction they're going to take it in. Yeah,
I read something about that, and it made me a little nervous just because it might slow down I've been enjoying the reissues, even though they're expensive.
Yeah. Well, we kind of touched on what we talked earlier about how Prince feels a lot more out there in the culture right now.
Oh, right. Yeah. I think the appreciation or fandom of Prince has only grown exponentially since 2016, since he passed. We did. We talked about that the other day. It was kind of like, why is that? Why has he become not just like, oh yeah, famous dead rock star, but like legend, like a legend. You know,
Well,
there's still, and it grows every year, I feel.
I think part of that is one, the reissues that the estate keeps putting out and kind of keeping him in the cultural discussion by re-releasing all this material. And also, I think you have to remember when Prince was alive, for good or bad, he had very strict control over where his music was and how it was out there. And so you couldn't find him on Spotify, really. Yeah. Couldn't find him on YouTube. Like his videos were nowhere. And then once he passed, they decided that, we're going to take a different attitude, obviously. And all his videos are on YouTube and all his music's on Spotify. And he's just way more available, than he was before. Because like I said, for better or worse, he just had that stronger control on where his music was.
Do you think he would have eventually kind of come around more, even so, if he'd still be here with us? Do you think he would have been more open to things like that?
It's hard to say. I obviously I don't want to speak for him because he's pretty. I don't think anyone can speak for him. But
well, okay. So not to put you on the hot spot, but like, okay, he denounced rap music in the 80s, right? And then he hired a rapper in the new Power generation. I feel like he evolved, right? I'm not want to say he contradicted himself. I think he changed his mind, or he became more open to things like that.
I think if he found a revenue model that he felt worked for him, I think he'd be fine with it. Like if he could find a way to monetize YouTube in a way that he felt was fair, then I think he would have been open to it for sure.
Yeah, I feel like he was writing his autobiography at the time of his death, right? Like that's a very like rock star thing to do that maybe he just kept putting off, and then finally he's like, you know what? I deserve a book about myself. I wish he had finished it. It's too bad.
Yeah, me too. I was hoping I was going to be in it somewhere.
Oh yeah. And plus just hearing things from his perspective, like why did he, there's only one person who knows the true story about the Black Album, right? Why he changed his mind, and he maybe those stories he would have they would have made it to the book. I don't know. It would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk favorites real quick before we transition to the next part of Purple Hours, which I'll be playing about an hour and a half of set. So, do you have? I've seen you do your countdowns. Your streams are awesome. You put a ton into your production. Like you can definitely tell your art background is like present. It's awesome. And all your emotes are amazing too. So congratulations on all those things.
Thank you.
Senior countdowns, like if you had to pick, and if I had to pick, I would tell you an answer now, but I would probably say, it'll change next year.
Yeah, totally.
Even next month, right? But today, October 2022, do you have a favorite album, favorite song, or a top 3 or a top 5?
Yeah, I think for me, like, growing up with his music in the 80s, it's like the albums that I can connect with experiences and periods of time. So, I remember just being in high school and listening to Parade and Sign of the Times, just being like blown away and really feeling like they were, very special records that communicated to me in a very unique way. So I always kind of go back to those records when I'm putting on some Prince to listen to. I always kind of go back to Parade and Sign of the Times as that period of time where I felt really connected to what he was up to. And and Mountains being one of those songs that I just immediately connected with and really responded to, and just remember walking around with my cassette headphones listening to my cassette of Parade, just listening over and over again.
That song in particular, Mountains, for me, I got to see the remaining members of the Revolution play a set at Bonnaroo, and I think it was 2019, I want to say. So they were touring and playing all the Prince stuff, and it was amazing. But when they played Mountains, I just got so sad. I was like, this music is so good. And they played it so well. I mean, it was an incredible version that they did. I wish I had seen more of that tour. But like that song came on and it just like I almost like started getting choked up right there in the middle of Bonnaroo. I'm like, oh my God, he's really gone. And
well, yeah. I mean, I saw the Revolution perform at Paisley Park on the 1 year anniversary of his passing, and when they did like Sometimes It Snows in April, like
not a dry eye in the house.
everyone was on the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they even played that song. I mean, how could, you know what that song? What another moment with that song is when I saw D'Angelo perform it like a day or 2 days after his death on Jimmy Fallon's show, I want to say, and it was with Questlove and the Roots backing him up, but he was mostly solo on piano, and he like choked on the last line, you know, and I'm just like, and I was just crying at the TV. I just because it was that same week. You can't find that performance online. It kills me because that was really special. I can't find the D'Angelo cover of Sometimes It Snows in April that he did that week. I saw it with my own eyes, so I know he did it. It's just I can't find it. But I was so emotional that week when he passed. I remember feeling the same way when Michael Jackson passed in 2009, just going straight home from work and putting Off the Wall on my record player that night. Same with, you know, April 2016 was, oh my God, you know, like you're just so overwhelmed with grief, and the only thing you can do is put his music on.
Yeah, I was working for Microsoft at the time, and my coworkers had known my history. And so when that happened, I was like, I got to go. And I went home, and I didn't go into work for like another 5 days. And my coworkers sent me flowers as condolences because
that's special.
They understood what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, I'm just talking to you about it now. It's emotional, but you know, it's. I think we wouldn't think of him the way we do now if he were still here today. There's something about him not being with us anymore that we just like go even closer to the music, closer to images of him, and want to rewatch all the movies, and the nostalgia is thick with Prince, and I just can't explain why it's so different with him. I feel that it is, and I know that it is, but I can't explain why it is.
I think part of it is since he's passed, like there's just been so many people coming forward with their stories, like, you know, like I was telling you, like I've talked to more people doing interviews since he's passed than I ever did before. And, you know, there's just so much, there's this outpouring of like, you know, this is my experience with him. This is what happened when I worked with him, or just as a fan, even like, this is what he meant to me. And you hear a lot more of that. And I think it's some of that mystery, you know, is him as this enigmatic figure.
Yeah.
It's kind of taken away. He's kind of brought down to earth a little bit, you know, like in a good way.
I think that's it, right? Like even the Chappelle sketch just made him into such like a comedy figure for a moment, but that was him. Like he didn't care. That was, you know, that was like a real story about him, and he owned it. He's like, yeah, that happened. And not only that, he just walked it on a different plane. He didn't walk above us. His frequency was different. And because of that, he made a lot of uncomfortable people feel accepted. You know, he represented definitely the underrepresented, and you know, he was a gentle person. I think that's why we miss him so much, and we just hold him. It's emotional to talk about him because, you know, a rock star dies, you get sad. Like even one of the Beatles passes away, we're sad, we celebrate with the music, and we're glad to still have that. But there's so much more emotion thinking about Prince and celebrating Prince, and, you know, even talking about him right now. But I think it's just the way he was. He was just a delicate person. He was an artist, very sensitive artist.
Well, I think there's also that sense too that, you know, he died relatively young. Like this was definitely somebody who had more to offer and who was going to do more. Like I expected him to be playing his guitar at 80 years old, complaining about the record industry, you know, like that was
heels.
And that's what that dude was going to be. That was his future. And so I think when that was taken away, it was a big shock. He wasn't retired living in France somewhere. Like he was still actively
He was working. Yeah, he looked pretty tired at the end, but it's you know, it's inconceivable. It was such a bizarre year. I think about it all the time. We lost David Bowie, we lost Prince within a few months of each other, and then the end of the year was like George Michael passed away. These artists aren't necessarily like exactly like each other, but their legend status kind of is, you know. And all three of those artists, they just grow in legend status as time goes on. And is, you know, I couldn't believe it when I arrived at Twitch and just saw the amount of people paying tributes to Prince on Twitch alone just showed me how his legend is so great.
Yeah.
So sure. Yeah, that was fun, Sam. I really enjoyed talking to you about your work with Prince, you know, some of your creations. I'll just show them again one more time. This is so cool. Sam did this stuff. Hearing about, you know, running the music club, and we get to just hang out with you here on Twitch. You know, every Monday you do a Prince set. I do mine once a month. So, you know, it's fun to have this as a regular thing, and we keep celebrating him on a regular basis. Yeah, that makes me happy.
Thank you for having me, for sure.
Thanks for being here. So I got to explain to the crowd real quick. There's going to be a slight disruption because I'm changing machines. I'm going to start streaming some music. It's probably going to take 10 to 30 seconds. And there might be a blip in the stream, but don't go anywhere, people, please. We're not rating out. Stay where you're at. And if you have to refresh your screen in about a minute, please do. We're going to end the talk stream real quick, and we're going to start playing some music in a moment. Sam, you're the best.
Thank you.
We'll do this again sometime, okay? Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thanks again, man. All right.